good morning, and welcome to the Vantage Point. We have a really, really good conversation that's going to happen today. We're talking about girl code. And does girl code exist in the church? So when I was younger, I remember about 18 dating somebody in the church. I've only really dated seriously 2 people in the church, and I married both of them. That's a whole nother show. But but I remember dating somebody. I was new to the church. I remember dating somebody, and they had a previous relationship with somebody else in the church. And I didn't know a whole lot about, when the breakup happened and when they started dating me, but it became a whole thing because just because he was done didn't mean she was done. And so it turned into a whole drama-filled situation. But I found myself really actually kind of violating the girl code. I think I did. I'm a violator of the girl code. So I want to talk today about, does the girl code exist in the church? What is it? Does it exist in the church? And how do we as women not create trust issues around the girl code? So what do you guys think?
Well, I think we have to define girl code
Okay.
first.
Absolutely.
What is it?
Well, I think it's the ideal that you do not date an ex of somebody one of your sisters in the church. I believe that's what girl code is. So keeping those boundaries up. What about you guys?
I'm torn on this one because, again, I feel like the girl code is something that we adopted outside of the church and brought inside the church, because you never really hear about girl code in the word, but you do hear about sisterly love and how we're supposed to treat each other. So I need a definition of what exactly, and maybe Dr. Jessica, you can tell us, what exactly is your definition of girl code in the church?
So that's why I said I'm a little bit torn as well, because I feel as though in your situation, Jenny, you were innocent. You didn't have any friendship with the young lady. Like, were you friends with the lady?
No.
You had never been out. You had never been to her house.
No.
You said, girl, let's go have some coffee.
No.
If I don't have a relationship with you, that's a whole different story of girl code to me. Now, if I'm your girl, like, we're friends, right? So I have no business. It would be very odd for me to be dating somebody that you divorced or any of you divorced. That's nasty. You know what I'm saying? That's what that is to me. But as far as if we don't have any type of relationship, that would be a little bit, I don't know. You would really have to gauge that, because depending on the level of the relationship, if I don't have anything with you, then I don't know if I think it's something wrong with that.
So let's look at it a little differently. I had somebody tell me they were dating someone, they were looking to get married, and another female approached him and said, well, you're not married yet, so until you're married, you're still on the market. Even though they were in a serious relationship, or what they deemed as a serious relationship, there was no rings exchanged, there was no vows exchanged, but, according to this person, it was, well, you're not married, so you're still available.
I think that's
So how does that
raunchy.
right?
Okay.
I think she's raunchy.
How does that not create trust issues or girl code issues in the church?
Well, that's
right?
a whole different subject. Like, if you are in something serious, if it's not a secret that y'all together, then yes, that's the problem. Because some people got a secret relationship. Well, I was dating him. Well, who knew? Nobody knew other than you. You know what I'm saying? That you were in a relationship with this person. Now, we could take the conversation up to another level as far as girl code issues or sisterly issues, because I feel like once a person becomes married to that person, because it's either that you're married, engaged, or single. But if you're not engaged to that person, and the person, first of all, that you need to be talking to that man if he's entertaining that woman, and if y'all not in engagement or marriage. I think you need to have another conversation to see what your role really is, because maybe you think it's something that he don't think.
Well, I know when Eldon and I were dating, when we got engaged. He said that was like the best thing for his love life ever because girls came out the woodwork. Yes, he said they just started inboxing. You know, they were texting him like he was like, I should have got engaged a long time ago.
Only
but
Eldon was.
I know, right? I never confronted not one of them, and largely that's a credit to my husband because he didn't make me feel like they were a threat.
Right.
I think girl code essentially is just respect.
Yeah,
That's all it is.
But is it respect even in the church, or should it be our love language? You know, because Bible says love doesn't behave itself unseemly. Some of the things I just described is unseemly to me. And I think the other question that I would pose is, how long, if it's about a relationship, does that girl code last?
May I say something really quickly? I agree with you and I disagree with you, and I'm gonna tell you why. I personally think that let me come back to my thought. Go ahead. I'm gonna come back to my thought because I want to say it right. I want to say it right. No, because I mean it is a lot of wretchedness, and I love what the point that she drove home. He never made you feel like they were a threat because women know who you are. You know what I'm saying to this man, and they're gonna try, but it was the man's position to not make her feel like it was something wrong. You know that, and then he came back and told her. So that was another thing too. You know, like you don't got nothing to worry about with these chicks because with these sisters because they're not chicks. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna go back to love, because whether we're talking about the girl code or whether we're talking about another scenario, the way we treat each other, whether we're single, married, or whatever the case is, I think it speaks to our love level. If I love you, there's no reason in the world you should be intimidated, or not intimidated. I should give anything off to you that makes you think that, in this case, I want to talk to your ex or your current, because love doesn't act like that. So to me, I'm going back to where my love level is. If my love level is in the right place, then I'm not going to purposely do something to jeopardize or mistreat you.
There are 8 women to every man in the church.
Come on now.
Okay? There just are. And to think that you can't date somebody's ex, a lot of people, even in our church, wouldn't be married because they dated somebody. But date to, seriously involved and engaged, that's a different story. But, you're young. We were all young at the same time. So they dated somebody. So I think that a matter of respect is definitely one thing. How long is interesting, because let me tell y'all something. If I leave Wayne Rogers, bet nobody, ever. He's single for the rest of his life. No, I'm just kidding. I'm never leaving. He's stuck with me. No, I'm just
To death do us part.
To death do us part.
And then some.
But there's so few men in the church that, it really does speak to, what does it go into finding a mate, right? You don't date around the church and leave a trail of broken hearts around the church to find the right one. I just don't believe you do that. You just don't do that. But I think that, when we're talking about how long, that's a good question. If you dated somebody when you was 18 and now you 40 and married to somebody else, that means they can't date.
Yeah, I just think you need to, seriously, because if you're single, hey, different perspectives for wherever you at in your life. Now, I think that if you was friends with the woman, like we're friends, you pass away, that's off limits, bound, nothing, zero, zilch, nothing. Same for you and you. You just don't do that. But if there was even if we're in the same place, you can't tell a person not to date. Plus you're gone. Or even if you're divorced, let's talk about that a little bit with the girl code. What if you're divorced? Are you not supposed to date anybody in your congregation? I'm just asking. I really do want to know that. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends
as far as
on
boundaries.
who set up these rules.
That's right. That's right. That's what I'm saying.
Because
That's what
your
I'm saying.
rule may not be my rule.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the point. That is the point.
And that's why I keep falling back to our word and how we treat each other.
And I agree with that.
Because again, my rules are not you all's rules. You know, we don't all think the same way. What I might think is a violation of the girl code in my mind, you might not. And that's how you get these other relationships from the past.
Well, one rule that I think, if you mess with my husband, then that is a violation of the girl code, period.
Yeah, I think that's a given, but I think we're
No,
talking about
but some
if
people may not
there's-
have the same amount. You just said it. Some people may not think that way. Well, he came on to me, girl. You what?
So,
I don't know.
I think that's another topic.
It is.
No, it's
That's
sti-
different.
I don't think it's different. I think it's still a girl code.
I think dating is different. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
technically,
that's
I
another
guess
topic.
thinking about this, if I, because Eldon and I grew up together. Eldon's my husband. I've known him since I was 10. We know everybody who the person talked to. We're friends, you know? And even his serious high school relationship, she and I were real cool. We're still cool. I have no... Why would I feel some kind of way about her? But they were done. I
Right.
mean, done. Not we still friends. I think that's different. We still friends. Maybe there's an opening. Like when he leaves it muddy, that's a problem. But he,
Define
you know,
muddy, though.
muddy, like she's still out there hoping, thinking. He's like, you know, I just want to take a break. I hate when men use language like that. It doesn't say the same thing as we're done.
Right.
And so, she and I are still cool to this day. I'm not gonna look at her sideways because she used to date my husband in high school. What? We grew up together. So
Right.
I guess to me, girl code, she had moved on, he had moved on. I wasn't the reason anybody moved on. And so it was okay.
My fault. What my fault? But you know, I think it's interesting. So my ex-husband and my current husband grew up together in church. So they did. We did not. We, you know, of course, I knew of him, but didn't know him personally. So, did I feel some type of way about marrying Wayne? Absolutely not. I did not. Didn't think about it at all. But you know, they grew up together. They knew each other. They've known each other. They grew up together. They weren't friends as adults. So I think that makes a big difference because they weren't friends as adults. But they did know each other. They knew each other's families. It wasn't an odd thing. It wasn't uncomfortable.
Men are different than women.
So, you know, I just think there's so many, like you said, everybody has rules. I think there are some rules that are definitely defined as these are no-nos you know. But I think girl code does exist. I do. I really do. And I think, like you said, respect is important. Caring about each other is important. Loving each other is important. Treat me the way you want me to treat you. If you wouldn't do that to me, I wouldn't do that to you. So that's what I think about that.
I love the polished answers. I really do. But I'm just being honest with you today. I really do love the polished answers. But let me tell you something. Because those are really cute examples. But I know we got to go for our
really
segment.
cute examples.
No,
We'll be
it's
right
really
back.
good.
We're getting ready to take a break. And we're going to come back and we're going to talk about boundaries.
Ooh.
And give some not so cute answers to those. We'll be right back. We're watching the VAntage Point.
Did you know that when you are quiet, your voice is missing to God's ears? I know some of us have prayed and we're wondering, how long should I pray about this? Why should I pray if God already knows? How will I know God is answering? And what do I do when I feel like God's not listening? But God is listening for your voice. It's too quiet in this world for the troubles we have. You have to raise your voice, and God wants to hear from you. It's Too Quiet, a book about prayer, is designed to answer your prayer questions and build your faith. Visit presstopray.com.
Your blood pressure numbers could change your life. Talk to your doctor about creating a plan that works better for you. Start taking the right steps at manageyourbp.org.
Life's taught me a lot, and I'm ready for more.
Well, you're not the typical kind of candidate that I hire. But you are exactly what I'm looking for.
Your company could be missing out on the candidates it needs most. Learn how to find a great pool of untapped talent at gradsoflife.org.
Welcome back to the VAntage Point. We are going to move into our next topic, which is the topic of boundaries. One definition of boundaries is defined as breaching confidentiality, inappropriate or verbal, physical aggression, inappropriate touching, sexual contact, keeping information from another person. I thought to open up the boundaries, we'd first talk about the definition and how this definition would fit into the church. Have you ever had someone cross the boundary with you, whether it was in a conversation, whether it had to do with a spouse or a child, or have you ever had someone cross a boundary? And how did you, Takoya, have you ever had someone cross a boundary and how did you handle it?
I'm sure I haven't. I'm trying to think of an example. They're already laughing at me because I'm not the one who's just gonna let that slide though. Like
Right.
we're not gonna be wondering about my boundaries for months and weeks.
Right.
I'll be like, okay, you just went too far and this is over. This conversation's over. Or that, I'm like, okay, and I'm out. Like I don't feel the obligation to
But Takoya,
continue.
you are a leader. You are a youth pastor, and people get to talk to you, right? And you got to
Yeah.
take it because of your position, right?
No, take it is a different word.
Right.
I allow it, but I have an example. This one blessed individual, I'm not even gonna give their sex, called me, talking trash about something I said to their very grown child who was like 22, 23. And it was based on a conversation we had prior, the child and I, the young adult and I. And they're going off. That's why da-da-da-da. I let them for about a couple minutes. And then I met them where they could hear me. And I let them know.
We all want to know what that means.
I let them know that they didn't have all the information. And by the time I was done, they were apologetic. But you don't come at me like I'm your child. You can talk to your child about whatever you want, but you're not coming to me like that. So yes, I do have boundaries. I think I just consider boundaries respect though. I try to show people respect no matter what. And so for me, I set limits around my children, around my house, like who I allow to come to my house. I don't feel like that's a part of my ministry per se. And
I agree.
and so for me, boundaries are a big thing because I think you have to have limits to protect the things that I know God has assigned me to. Yes, I'm a minister, but I'm a mom and a wife first. So I set limits. My world is very compartmentalized, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'd say boundaries are important.
So, Dr. Jessica, have you ever had an experience where someone crossed the boundaries?
Oh, gosh. Can we come back to me? Because I've had plenty. No, seriously, I've had plenty. But I think that when I wasn't clear about what boundaries should be, I allowed so much that when I started setting them, people started thinking that I was acting funny. And it's not that I'm acting funny, it's that, no, you're disrespecting me. And I believe that's why God gave us emotions, so that we can know when we are being violated, when those boundaries have been crossed. You doing this, you hitting me is not good. You've crossed a boundary. You don't hit me out. I've already been raised, right? That's just the truth. I think that when you don't set boundaries, let me put my arms down, sorry. When you don't set boundaries, because I don't want to be jiggling my bracelets. When you don't set boundaries, you set yourself up for failure. Because then at that point, you're the one that's inflicting the pain on you, not them, because you haven't set a clear boundary. Is that making sense what I'm saying?
So in the church, when we say we're setting boundaries, I want to go back to something you said, Takoya. You said, I do have a role and responsibility, but I'm also a wife and a mom first. And I think sometimes when you serve, and particularly in God's house, people forget that. They only see the perimeter or the boundary set for you as a servant to them, not that you have other responsibilities. One thing that was shared on our Facebook page, we asked the question, name a pet peeve you have. And a lot of single sisters chimed in and said that their pet peeve is that people think because they're single that they have time to do everything that needs to be done in the church. And I think that's interesting. I think that we have seen that before. But Jenny, what do you think about that?
I think they do have time to do everything. Just kidding.
No, you're not.
Email her, email Jenny.
I'm not. I think you do have time.
Target Jenny.
Email Jenny.
Don't target us.
Hashtag Jenny said it.
Yes.
I think when you're serving, that it really is about your heart. and what you, because if you start looking at serving like a chore, oh, they're giving me this busy work to do because I don't have a family, as opposed to looking at it like I'm doing something for the Lord, I can see you getting in that vein. I remember being single and I had kids, but I wanted to work for the Lord. And there was stuff that I couldn't do because I had kids, I had responsibilities. And so I felt like I was being overlooked or whatever because I had stuff to do. I couldn't take my kids everywhere when I wanted to do something. So I think, when you're single, you look at this time like I have no limits on what I can do for God. And I just think you have to look at it differently. And a lot of that goes to where they are in their life at the present time. I just really think you got to look at it differently. So yes, you do have time. Just right.
Hashtag Jenny said it.
I said it.
I think it's funny because when I understand why, the single sisters that were responding to our Facebook page said that, but I do agree it depends on where you're at in being single. Because I remember while I was divorced and single, I tried to do everything I could.
Stay busy.
And again, I was in a different place, because, and this is a whole different topic.
Why is it a whole different topic?
But when you are single, to me, after being married, that's a different type of singleness versus single and never being married. And that's why I say that's a whole different topic, because that is. But in respect to both, for me, when I was single, I was like, okay, I think I joined the Christian Greeters, I joined the choir.
Stay out of trouble, girl.
I did everything that I could because I needed to occupy that time in that space.
Right.
And that's why I say I respect both sides of that. But I thought that was interesting that, to me, that's a boundary. Whether you think I have time or not, don't automatically come to me and say, this is what I need you to do, and be disappointed when I say no.
Yeah, it's about the
How
approach.
does she know what somebody thinks?
It's about the approach, right? If you're coming to me just because I'm single and I ain't got no kids and you say you can do it, that's different, right? Yeah. It's like my boss, when he wants me to do something, he'll say, Jen, I got an opportunity for you. And so when he texts me now, I'm like, I'm full up on opportunities. I'm good. I don't need anything else to do.
Because you know his language.
Yeah, I know what he's talking about. But it really is about the approach, because you don't want them to feel like, oh, you ain't got nothing else to do. You know what I mean? That's just not, I don't think that's fair.
That's a boundary to me.
Yeah, and I think, like Jessica said, when you don't set them for yourself, then you start setting them, because people will do what you let them. You have to teach people how to treat you, right?
Yes.
If you don't teach them how to treat you, they're going to treat you however, it makes sense to them and it's comfortable for them. But I'm always a firm believer. You teach people how to treat you. You teach people what your boundaries are, because they don't automatically know.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, well, let me just say this. I think that a lot of times people say, well, you just think because I'm single, I don't have anything to do. Well, who are you talking to? Because I don't just assume that people don't have anything to do. I always assume.
I think you do, because you call me at all hours.
Well, that's
like I ain't got a whole job.
If we didn't have,
This is actually true.
if we did not
Jess
have
will
that,
call you at midnight talking about
wait.
what you doing.
Facebook message.
No, look who's talking.
And phone calls.
2 o'clock in the morning,
And phone
email.
calls.
No, this is Takoya.
We're turning on each
I'm
other.
asleep. No, because that's what they do. But you know what? Now that I know that I've crossed the boundary with you, I will never again do it, because you guys call me and text me too. Now listen, I don't say don't call me at 3:35.
I've never said don't do it. I just don't answer.
Exactly.
When I feel like, I can't answer.
Okay, if you can't answer, that's fine. I'm not upset, because it's just like you'll get back to me. But listen, I do not call and bug people. I really have a life. I promise you, I have a life outside of.
Yes, you do.
You do. You have a life. You
I do have a life, but let me quit. No, but what I was saying, to stay on topic, I just think that a lot of times you need to have a conversation with somebody, because the lady who said that, I could tell in her speech, that's why I didn't respond, because I think she has something else going on. She might have had an encounter. That doesn't mean that everybody thinks it because one person thinks it, because I don't go around thinking what does this single person have to do? Or, my life doesn't evolve around that to think that way. At least maybe I don't.
I mean, I know I've heard that statement more than once, so I don't think it's just limited to the person who commented that, because it sounds like it's a common thing. I do agree with Jennifer. I think it's in the approach. When somebody approaches you last minute, throwing stuff at you and acting like, hey, you got to do this in the next 24 hours, that does make your time feel disrespected.
Right.
But again, I agree. Boundaries are not given, they're taught. And so if I don't want you to do something, if I'm not going to advocate for me, I can't hold them guilty for not
Absolutely.
advocating for me.
Absolutely.
So I think you got to set that limit and, hey, own it, you know?
Yeah, boundaries is not a bad word. You know, I think they're necessary, and I think the boundaries that are set, I think they change as we get older.
Yes.
You know, there's some things in my 20s and my 30s, and I'm no longer in either one of those categories anymore, that I don't think the same way. You know, you could say it to me or you could ask me to do it, and you might have gotten a really, really quick yes. Now you might get a really, really quick no. Because I've defined what I have time to do and what I don't have time to do. And that is inside of God's house and outside of God's house, because I do have other responsibilities. I think one of the things that, especially as women, if we serve in God's house, we have a requirement outside of God's house to our home, to our families, which should be first. So if you're gonna ask me to do something and it's going to, I'm not saying that I didn't prioritize my time right or I just don't want to do it, but if you're asking me something now, I evaluate it. I'm like, okay, do I have time to commit to this and do it wholeheartedly? Is this going to take me away from something else that I've already committed to? That's something I didn't always process in my 20s and my 30s, you know, and I think amongst women, we have to set those time boundaries. We have to just, even the time that we spend with God, there has to be a boundary around those things to protect it. You guys agree?
Yep.
Absolutely. Because if I don't spend time with the Lord in the morning, now I get to the point where I'm not bringing my phone into this place, because if I do, I know I'm going to hear, and I even learned how to cut my phone, my ringers and stuff off, or not even do the vibrate. Like, I didn't know how to do that. But so now that I do, I said, nah, I'm not going to do this because I don't want him to feel as though our time is, you know, other people's time. So I'm very cautious about that. I know that we didn't hit on a couple of things that I did want to touch on as far as boundaries with, I love what you said about your children. You've set those boundaries with your children, with with your spouses, whatever the case may be, because I believe that if you don't set them, that you can potentially be walking around with odds with people. And some people may not even know that they crossed your boundary. Right. You know, I saw you touch my husband's arm, or you came and talked to my kids. You should have came and talked to me first. You know, all of that kind of stuff. No, seriously, but it happens. But if I don't know your boundary, then I'm subject to or might cross that.
We are excited that you joined us today on The Vantage Point, and we hope that you've heard something that encourages you and challenges you. And we want you to stay tuned and join us next week on The Vantage Point.